For many Americans, work can feel like a hamster wheel. No matter how hard they run, it never feels like enough. Americans, on average, say they would need $520,000 a year to feel rich. And the more people earn, the more they say they need to feel comfortable. Americans making under $50,000 felt they needed $157,000 a year to feel comfortable. Those making $100,000 or more said they would need $246,000.
When I was in middle school, a song came out called Mo Money, Mo Problems. And I think that that's true. Your problems scale. You still are dealing with a finite number every month. Your worries, your anxiety, your budget scales to that. You still are dealing with a ceiling.
About 14% of all U.S. households make $200,000 or more every year. But many of them, dubbed Henrys or high earners, not rich yet, still don't feel rich. 62% of people with salaries over $300,000 a year struggle with credit card debt.
Earning doesn't actually make you feel rich, spending it does. If most people spent 99% of their paycheck, they'd feel quite rich. And it's the paradox here, when we're in accumulation mode, it's very difficult to feel rich.
It can be pretty easy for someone to feel like I'm making really good money, but I don't have a lot of discretionary income.
Earning more and feeling like you're still on a hamster wheel is what a lot of Henrys experience. And that's because they're not living within their means. They may have been living above their means when they weren't nearly making as much money. And now they're just continuing to add more and more and more.
I earn $300,000 and I live in New York City. I definitely don't feel rich. I feel very lucky. I feel privileged, but I do not feel rich. I could not stop working right now. I have more money anxiety almost now than I ever did in my 20s. I am on a hamster wheel and there's no question about it.
Henrys often don't feel rich compared to others. Many Henrys are cash rich and asset poor. So they're typically people under 40. They don't have childcare hours available. They're first-time home buyers in the housing market. They're paying off student loans early, hopefully. And their income usually hasn't hit a career peak. So they're very much in that not rich yet bucket, but they very well could be in the future.
Oh, I 100% feel like a Henry.
Maria Contreras was a professional composer, band leader, and pianist who started her virtual assistant business in 2016.
That year, I started to grow slowly, and I was suddenly earning more money than I had ever earned in my life. And I think the number was something like $35,000 by the end of the year. And I went, wow, this is really great. I can grow this.
She then expanded into a digital marketing consulting agency during the pandemic.
For the calendar year of 2025, we're just on track to make 1.4 million. We're hoping to get to 1.5 or possibly even 1.6. I'm anticipating my owner's draw to be anywhere between 300,000 and 400,000. Had a pretty successful career as a musician through most of my 20s. The thing they don't tell you about having a career as a musician in music school is that you can be playing Carnegie Hall, which I was, and I was making $15,000 a year. And I didn't realize how much freedom money affords you. Now that I see the kind of freedom that somebody who earns what I do or even more has, that's my goal. That is absolutely what gets me out of bed in the morning.
A lot of the high earners, not rich yet, they're first generation wealth. So they still take their wealth into perspective against their family members or others in their community, and they realize how well they're doing. So they don't take it for granted. But I think what makes them feel not rich is we were told once you make six figures, all your problems will go away. You'll just have so much excess. And I think we know that narrative is not true anymore.
I would have thought back then that the amount of money that I have in the bank right now, I would be rich. I would have just thought, oh yeah, she's made it, and I don't feel that way. I know that I am on a hamster wheel with my business. I actually really love the hamster wheel. I love what I do, but I also realize that I can't stop.
So let's talk about the hamster wheel for a second. What does that mean? What does a hamster wheel mean? Anybody know? If you know what a hamster wheel means, put it in the chat. So real quick, hamster wheel, if you look at a hamster and it's riding on a wheel, right? And it's just going to continuously just go. And it's a never ending process, right? That hamster continues to just work and work and work and run and run and run. And the lifestyle that we have now based on the current economy is, when are you going to be able to retire? That's a real question. Are you going to be able to retire? Because right now we're living in a time where retirees got to get back in the workforce and get a job. because they don't have enough money to sustain the rate of inflation. They didn't make enough money long term. Their pensions is not enough. Their possible stock market investments is not enough. It's not making any money. And ultimately, in the end, their savings and their investments are running dry. So that now they got to go back to work. So you being someone that's not retired, if you're not retired right now, are you going to be in a hamster wheel to where you have to work for the rest of your life? And on this channel, what we're trying to do right now is trying to teach, pillars of financial success to where you don't have to do that. My goal is to retire at 45. I'm not trying to be working for anyone by the time I'm 45 years old. I got 10 years. So for the next 10 years, I got to do everything I possibly do to put myself and my family in position to where I don't have to work. It's possible to do it, but we have to understand how to do it and ultimately the steps that we got to take. Right now, we have high earners with Henrys, which is high earners that are not rich yet. People that make over, let's say, 150,000. Depending on where you live, it has a lot to do with it. So if you're in New York City or California, 150,000 is not a lot of money, right? But if you live in Alabama, Mississippi, places like that, 150,000 is pretty good, right? So based on where you live, the location where you live, the affordability and the standard of living in that location then matters to this conversation, right? So let's just say on average, the United States American makes 65,000, right? If you make double that, then you're in a really good situation depending on where you live. But being that you make $100, $150, $200,000, you get into this situation where you want more. So you make more money, but then you want more, which means that you got to spend more. So ultimately, in the end, it doesn't matter if you make 50, it doesn't matter if you make 100, it doesn't matter if you make 150. If you're spending the money, then you're still poor. Well, poor is probably not the right word. You're still living paycheck to paycheck. You're not secure, right? Only 30% of Americans have an emergency savings account of more than $5,000. So that tells me that 70%, the majority of Americans don't have enough money. If they lost their job right now, they don't have enough money to sustain themselves for more than 3 months. And for some people, that's a lot less than 3 months. Right. And in my situation in this household, I make sure that at all times we got enough money to pay for our expenses for a year, which we do. Right. If I lost my job, which I'm not, but if I lost my job, right, and I were not to be able to make any money, I still got enough money in investments or saved to where I can sustain my lifestyle for about a year. It's important that we understand all of these little details because then that impacts your decision making and how you live your life, right? You make a lot of money or you make more money, you spend more money, you're still struggling, right? I'm trying to get you out of the thought process of spending but into the thought process of investing.